Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Greater Miami Expressway Agency Board Meeting. I would like to formally call our meeting to order at, let me see, what time is it? Should we wait till 9 a.m.? Okay, let's wait a couple of minutes then. Okay. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Greater Miami Expressway Agency Board Meeting. I would like to formally call our meeting to order at 9 a.m. So please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. As board chair, I want to thank each of you for being here this morning. It is great to have our GMX board here at headquarters as we set the tone for new leadership and overall stability for the South Florida community. Let me take this time to commend each board member and our GMX staff for your continued due diligence as we continue our transition from our predecessor agency to GMX. Many of you may be watching or listening for the first time, and we welcome you. Our vision remains the same as we move ahead to ensure effective governance, financial sustainability for the agency, efficient operations, and overall stability during this transition period. Now I'm going to ask our corporate board secretary to conduct a roll call of board members.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Chair Cancio,
Present.
Vice Chair Perez. Present. Treasurer Pages. Present. Secretary Blanco. Present. Secretary Miller.
Present.
We have full quorum.
Thank you. Next, we have a declaration of voting conflicts. Board members, at this time, please advise if you have any conflicts based on the items on the consent agenda or regular agenda. Okay, hearing none, we proceed. Now let's move to our public comment period. If you wish to address the board today on any topic, you will be given 3 minutes to speak, and I will recognize Mr. Alston to identify those who have signed up to speak. Mr. Alston, you're recognized.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. No one has signed up to speak for public comment, but we'll open up if it's your pleasure, Madam Chair. If there's anyone that would love to speak and present to the board, you may do so at this time. Is there anyone who'd like to speak and present to the board? Is there anyone who'd like to speak and present to the board for 3 minutes? Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next is the approval of our meeting minutes from the August 9th, 2023 meeting. Board members, you've had an opportunity to review the minutes. Is there a motion for approval?
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion passes. Now we're on to the consent agenda. I will now ask our acting general counsel, Francine Seelman, sitting in for Rafael Garcia today, to read the consent items into the record. Francine?
Good morning, everyone. The administrative items are approval of travel on October 5th to Jacksonville, Florida by board members and interim executive director Austin to attend the Team Florida Quarterly Board Meeting. Approval to travel on October 7th through 10th, 2023 to Seattle, Washington by interim executive director Austin to attend the IBTTA 91st Annual Meeting and Exhibition. Approval to travel on November 8th, 2023 to Tallahassee by interim executive director Austin to attend the Florida Transportation Commission Transportation Oversight Meeting and present the agency's fiscal year 2022 Transportation Authority Monitoring and Oversight reports. Travel reimbursement for interim executive director Austin in the amount of $420.28, which was incurred representing the agency in the Second Judicial Circuit hearing in Tallahassee, Florida on August 7th. Mr. Austin testified as the interim executive director during that proceeding. And finally, authorization for interim executive director to work with counsel to negotiate and finalize the terms of the plan of transfer agreement with the Bank of New York Mellon Trust Company, as well as determine which officials and/or staff of GMX will be listed on the incumbency certificate, and then to execute all necessary documents on behalf of GMX. Item B, which is the human resources items. Termination of employment agreements for both former MDX Executive Director Darlene Fernandez and former MDX General Counsel Carlos Zaldivar. And then finally, approval of interim Executive Director's contract.
Thank you. Board members, you've heard the consent agenda, and now is the time to advise me if you have any items that you would like to pull from the consent agenda.
Can we pull item B2 and have a discussion regarding B2?
Yes, thank you. And after we vote on the consent agenda, when we discuss B2, the approval of the interim executive director's contract, I will ask Mr. Alston just to step outside for a minute. Is that okay?
Absolutely, Madam Chair.
Perfect. Okay, so we can vote. Is there a motion for approval of the consent agenda minus item B2? Is there a motion for the approval of the consent agenda? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any nays? No. Any nays? No. So motion passes. Okay, so now we're going to discuss item B2. I'll be right with you, Tori. Did you pass? Okay. I made some revisions to the contract. Yes, there it is. So it's not what you have because of sunshine and the fact that we have not been able to meet and discuss any of this. I wanted to have the input of everybody regarding the employment agreement. Basically, Mr. Alston has been acting as interim executive director, and this agreement basically gets him paid because he has not received any compensation until today. So the new revised agreement just confirms that he is an interim executive director because by statute, we need to conduct a national search for a permanent executive director. So the contract, it's a contract at will. It doesn't have a fixed term. Basically, will end when the new executive director is selected. And for that, I believe we're going to need to retain an executive search firm. So after we vote on this agreement, I think we need to also establish when we're going to select a national executive search firm to select the permanent executive director. And so the changes that I suggested, and I apologize that, you know, we were still talking last night and this morning. I didn't even want to put a salary amount until we discuss it based on what the prior executive director was getting paid, what other similar positions pay. And I just think it's something that we as a board have an obligation to discuss and agree on. I think Mr. Austin is doing an excellent job. He's been amazing in this transition period. And he needs to be recognized for his willingness to have worked this long with no compensation. So there's an item in here as well that leaves it blank. When do we make it effective? I think effective is the day that we agree on it and sign it, but we should have a retroactive amount of compensation going back to July 1st when the new statute was enacted. And he's been working for way longer than that. So I think at a minimum, whatever compensation we agree on, that he should receive a lump sum compensation for the 6 prior pay periods plus 10 days, if we approve that today. So the changes are in yellow on the document I just circulated. And if we agree on it, we can, have this revised and signed today so we can get him to be paid as soon as possible. But I think the important thing here to note is that there's no term, because if we agree on selecting an executive national search firm, that takes time. Normally, we can say from now until the November meeting, we can interview 2 or 3 national firms. I think that's what the colleges do. And then from there, I don't know how long it takes for them to find a qualified candidate. Basically, I don't think the statute, I checked with counsel, the statute is silent as to what are the requirements for this position. There's nothing specific about education or background. So I think we need to find a good qualified executive firm that will find the best qualified candidate for this very important position. So another thing that you have in the package that were similar, I think in the package it said a proposed salary of $365. I basically crossed that out in my notes, and I think it's something that we need to discuss. And based in other agencies and, obviously, there's some high salaries paid to other executives. Being this an interim position, I think we should start him at $320,000. But this is up to you for discussion. So these are basically my comments. I've checked, how much other executives and CEOs in other agencies in Tampa, Orlando make. But I think this is not something established by the state because we're a self-funding agency. So it's based on whatever the revenue is and the budget allocated for that position. So it's basically, we know that the prior executive director was making $368,000 plus some other additional compensation that I don't even think that it was proper, but regardless, I believe that, for our interim executive director, I was thinking of $320,000, but I'm, feel free to discuss it, and I would love to hear your comments.
Thank you. And Chair, I appreciate that. Obviously, we're just now reading through the document itself. I had some questions as well when I read the first version. So I appreciate that we've changed it to express that Tori is interim.
Yes.
There were some other clauses within the document that I don't think are fully fleshed out yet.
Okay.
So we definitely need to talk about the salary.
Sure.
But there was some vacation, sick, and holidays that was very vague, and it wasn't really clear what the accrual or how it accrues.
Well,
or
I'm glad you say that because I think it's part of our policies. Even reading the policies of the agency, I'm not even sure what those are either, so.
So that would be my second part. When we get to the policies, it was very vague in the policy.
Exactly.
And I know there's a handbook, but again, without having that handbook or understanding, it was this portion was a bit unclear to me. And we want to be obviously fair and appropriate, but I couldn't devise what that fair and appropriate compensation was or those benefits were. And then, of course, for the benefits itself, when reading some of the documents, I wasn't clear if GMX was assisting in the payment of those benefits for him and his family, or that was included in his salary structure and he could just utilize the programs that were established through GMX, but then pay for those programs. It was unclear when I was reading it.
So for the record, this agreement was prepared by our counsel, by our acting counsel, Francine Stillman, and it's a template that was used for the Central Florida Tourism Oversight Board when they hired their CEO. So this is the format that she used for this. Okay, so this is where it's coming from. Okay. But I agree that, we can make it better.
Yes, I think we can make it better.
Yes, we can make it better.
We can make it better.
So I don't know if you guys want to go, page by page or just the way that I read some of the policies, I believe that whoever works at the agency gets earns or accrues 1 day of vacation for every pay period.
I definitely didn't read that.
It's based on years of employment. and
Is it
there's,
years of service?
Correct.
So for year one, what do
For
employees?
year one, it would be 4 hours per pay period, as of right now.
Oh, so for year one would be 4 hours per pay period, and you have pay periods weekly or biweekly?
Bi-weekly,
Okay, so it would be 1 day per month.
per month, yes.
So after 12 months, it would be 12
It's
vacation days, which is 2.5
13
weeks.
days because it's 26 pay period.
Correct,
13 days.
correct.
Does that apply to directors, executive staff, or is that just what I would consider career employees?
What you would consider career employees. Obviously, executive directors in the past had a different contract with the different accruals, yes.
It's negotiated.
So I think it's up to us then. I mean, we can,
Did you discuss it?
no, we,
Who negotiated this?
well, no, this was the previous agreement, and I asked about the policy, so I thought it was going to be the same as any other employee. So I think he was okay with, just 13 days per year, but obviously,
Okay.
I think what I'm reading in this agreement is that it's exactly that he would adhere to whatever the rest
Correct.
of the employees are having, yeah.
yes, that's what we discussed, that it would be whatever the policies were here. So, yeah, the 4 hours per pay period is 1 day
Okay.
per month. So that would be 13.
Then we'll do that for accrued vacation and accrued sick leave and any personal holidays, et cetera.
Yeah, I think the
So
agency pays.
We would just tie it to whatever
Policy.
our
Perfect.
personnel.
Thank you for clarifying that. I
And
appreciate
so the benefits, I believe that the agency does pay for the employee, and there's a small charge for the family. Is that correct?
So we follow people first. Secretary Stacy, you are maybe familiar with that. So there is a small premium that the employees pay, and the agency pays the difference, correct?
Thank you for clarifying that as well.
So, and I believe anything else about the retirement or benefits, it's related to the state.
Correct,
Yeah.
So it's FRS.
Yes.
correct.
Perfect. Thank you again for clarifying. Those were my questions. Anyone else?
All right. Should we have a discussion on the salary
We should have a discussion on the salary or anything else.
or anything else on the contract?
Yes.
As far as, I defer to, obviously, you've got some experience on that side of the. of
Don't,
public-
I just
of
had
public
questions when reading it,
contracts, yes,
so
absolutely.
I'm not used to employment contracts. That's not how
Yeah.
my agency works, so.
Madam Chairman, your views, your reasoning why you would want to take it to 320, if I could hear that? Vis-a-vis prior executive director and other directors in the same region.
Mr. Alston also serves on the school board in Broward County. He receives a separate compensation for that, which allows him outside employment with no conflict. And I just think that we need to be fiscally conservative. And just because that's what was paid before doesn't mean that we have to pay the same amount.
All right.
So, but
But has he indicated that his time at school board would reduce his time here?
no, not at all. Not to the contrary.
All right. I personally don't see a reason why we would pay any less than we paid the previous director for the same amount of work or more in the restructuring, and especially in the kind of work that he's doing now in trying to make this thing all stay together. So I would favor keeping the salary as was already indicated in the original contract, but obviously that's my view.
Do you have any comments on the salary?
So I am comfortable with 320. I think it's appropriate. I think we've had some, I might choose my words so that I think we need to be appropriate, but we need to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible. And I think in this instance, that makes the most sense from a fiscally responsible perspective. I think it's an appropriate salary. I think it's very appropriate for where we are and the size of the agency that we're working with. So I'm comfortable with 320.
For clarification purposes, I don't know if this would help you. I mean, as I mentioned before, all the different agencies are self-funding, and the Central Florida Tourism Board CEO has a salary of $400,000. But for example, in Tampa, the prior CEO made $321,000, and the current CEO makes $300,000. So he's making less money. In Central Florida, we have not been able to determine yet what the current CEO makes, but the prior one was making $270,000. So these are other expressway agencies. Obviously, Miami's more expensive. This could be a temporary job that, or not. I mean, he can be considered for the permanent position if he's interested. But those were some of the thoughts that I had because.
I think from my perspective, if we're speaking like for like agencies, it's comparable and appropriate in those like for like agencies. And clearly, Tampa is an expensive area. Orlando is expensive. Miami is much more expensive. I don't disagree. Right. But I think it's an appropriate like salary for like type work.
We don't have any idea of more similar agencies like ours that, sorry, we don't have any idea of more similar agencies like ours that what the salary is, closer, more accurate?
Yeah, well, I think that the Tampa Expressway Authority and the Orlando Expressway Authority are similar in nature to our agency, different metropolitan areas, but, and both of those pay a lot less than what we paid here before. So I think it's something that, it's up for discussion, but I think recognizing that we should not just follow what was there before, assuming that was right.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And I think, from what I can tell here, he won't be having a vehicle allowance like there was before, so that's $12,000 a year. And also there was a annual business allowance with the previous director of $10,000 per year, so that's
And that
$22,000.
And that $10,000 business allowance didn't need to be audited or justified in any way. That I don't even know how that was even legal. So, what do you think about the salary?
I tend to agree with Mr. Pages about, due to the circumstances that we're in and trying to keep things in check, and due to the amount of work that's going to be required, I would even, dare I
You're going
say.
to pay him more. I agree.
No, yes, well, I may not be in favor of the entire amount. I think somewhere in between may be more appropriate. 350 is my suggestion, as a balance.
Do we know what the previous director, not the one that we dealt with now, but the Javier before? Do we know? Do you know what his
Do
salary
we
was?
know?
I believe it was 279 by the time
It
he
was
left.
279.
I believe so.
Okay, and he left about 18 months ago.
Yes.
Okay, that's relevant information, actually. That's quite relevant.
Well, and so how much inflation? We've had
Right.
quite a bit of inflation. So if it
Right.
was 280 and you add 20% to 280, 20% more, it would be, what, 56,000
Yeah,
more?
right.
So that we would
That's a
be
good
at
number.
we'd be close to that, but
You end up at the 320, 325 mark.
Right.
Right around.
yes.
So,
All right.
So,
And Madam Chair, there's a lot of work to do.
yes,
And he's been doing a lot of work, and I think he's shown that
absolutely.
he's been able to do the work. So
So,
I'm in agreement with Board Member Blanco that 350 is a fair number.
Madam Chair, if I may just
yes.
to be clear on the record, our previous executive director before Darlene Javier, he did finish at more or less that salary, but he never actually took an increase to his actual salary. Every time he would get increases, it would be a lump sum payment. So his actual base salary was not affected.
So what
Oh,
was
so he was making more than that.
so what was his actual payment, his actual yearly compensation? Do we know?
It varied depending on the amount of increase that he got, depending on his evaluation.
Okay, so the last year, do you have any idea?
Was it 5?
On average, he would take like a 5% bonus instead of an annual increase.
Correct.
So his base never changed,
No.
Not for years.
but then he would
For
just
years.
take his increases as lump sums, but his base would appear at 275,
Correct.
and he was here for how long?
15 years.
15 years. And that was his base from the very beginning?
No, it did increase a little bit throughout the years. At some point, he decided that he did not
Okay.
want to.
Totally unrelated topic, but that's totally non-transparent
Of course.
things that-
And I think that's why we need to have this conversation.
And I think
find
from a
out.
board perspective, and I'm glad I didn't know this, as a board perspective, we'll look towards that issue at a later date, but that's an unacceptable payment structure.
Right.
Lost my train of thought there for a second.
So I hear two proposals for 350. And let me be clear, this salary amount is in no way a reflection of his work. And I don't think these things are related. I think if you see how much our lieutenant governor or governor make on an annual basis, I think it's around $150,000 for the amount of work that they do. So this has nothing to do with his performance personally. It's just, in general, looking at the numbers. And by the end of the meeting, I'm going to show you other numbers that bother me. So I'm comfortable with the 350.
So am I, yes.
And we can just put it we can vote if we would agree to make it the 350. Would you all agree to make it retroactive for 6 pay periods to July 1st? Because, yeah, plus the 10 days. And we wouldn't,
and the 10 days was,
it's, I think, from the last pay period until today.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I think from July.
So it's basically retro to July 1st is what
Correct.
we're recommending.
Retroactive to
and
July
I'm
1st.
comfortable with that, given our
Yes.
scenario.
Let's see if there's anything else. So the employment would be effective today, and the annual salary would be 350 if we agree on that, and he would be paid for prior work from July 1st.
And Chair Concio, just as a point of clarification.
Yes.
You guys are agreeing to the essential terms and conditions of the agreement, and we'll finalize the agreement. But I also want to check with FRS to make sure that what we do is consistent with FRS, since this is an FRS contract. And it is an interim contract, but it still needs to be consistent.
About the lump sum payment?
No, not about the payment, but just making sure that everything that we do here is consistent, because again, I mean, I want to check to make sure there are no conflicts with FRS itself. His board service with Broward County,
Right.
I think is FRS, but I just want to make sure that we don't have any conflicts, that's all.
Okay. But you prepare the agreement? Just making sure that
Yes,
this is not.
Yes, and I
okay.
just want to confirm before anything is signed, you guys are agreeing to the essential terms and conditions, but I just want to make sure that this is an agreement that we're not going to have any problems with from an FRS standpoint.
Okay, perfect. So I would like to put this for a vote, this agreement, this employment agreement with the general terms that we discussed, with the base salary of $350 and the retroactive pay in a lump sum back to July 1st, with the normal benefits that any other regular employee would receive. So do I hear a motion to approve the employment contract as discussed?
Motion to approve.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
It's not a nay. I just want to make sure that the motion includes the confirmation of no conflict with FRS.
Yes, so should
Sorry.
we revise?
Get
the-
in there
No, that's
fast enough.
appropriate.
Yes, it's appropriate.
Thank you.
So,
The finalized contract will be consistent with whatever FRS rules are.
Thank you.
so then we do a revised motion to approve the contract to be consistent with FRS.
Second the motion.
Okay. So, Board Member
Motion.
Perez motions.
Motion to approve the contract consistent with FRS compliance.
Second.
Sorry, but since you throw that in there, if it is found to not be consistent, he continues not to get paid until the next board meeting?
No, my concerns really are making sure that any other board service that he has with an FRS entity is not conflicted with this contract. So I just need to make sure that, I mean, and it's something that was brought up and I think is very, which I didn't really think about, was the fact that he's being paid by Broward County Board, which I know is FRS. So that triggered, I just want to make sure that there's no problems.
Right, and that's fine.
We'll make
That's-
it-
And that's fine,
Okay.
but should it be found to be in conflict, we therefore cannot sign the contract.
Yeah, no, the conflict has to be resolved before the contract
Right,
is
so that
signed by
means,
the
that
chair.
means
So,
he won't have a contract or he won't get paid until the next board meeting.
No, because I can sign the contract. I have the authority to sign the contract if, in the general terms. So if she says there's no conflict, I sign it. If she says there is a
then we'll
conflict,
fix the problems.
Then
We'll figure
we'll
out what the
fix the
problems are and
problem.
report that back to
And
the
the
board.
fix is a technical issue.
If there needs to be a fix, it will be a technical issue.
Okay,
It
I
won't
just
be-
want to make sure that
It won't
he-
be on the essential terms and
Should-
conditions. we're
Should
agreeing
the
to.
conflict create the issue, he needs to get paid for the work he's done since July.
Right.
It just won't be reported. So if there would be, I'm sorry, if there would be a conflict, then the time and the pay that he receives from GMX will not be reported to FRS. That would be the
part of the
resolution of the
Right,
conflict.
but, okay.
like as a consulting
All right.
service perhaps, or?
It won't be part of FRS credit, because you know, when you work for FRS, you get credit on your
Okay.
time and salary. So if there's a conflict, the time that the interim period won't be reported to FRS as compensation, which means it won't be calculated into their
Retirement.
Okay, because I,
He'll still receive compensation.
Right.
He just won't get FRS credit
Credit.
for that time.
understand. Thank you.
And remember, this is an interim contract, so
Correct.
we can resolve this issue at some point. Right now, it's just a matter of getting him compensated for.
Under contract and
Right, I
compensation.
just don't think anybody should continue to work
No,
without getting
agreed.
paid.
Understood.
I mean, none of us do. But not, I don't
And
get
he's
paid.
been doing it for a long time.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, this is a matter of FRS credit.
I understand, I understand. And I apologize, I'm not from the
No,
government
no
side,
worries.
so some of these terminology kind of means something different.
Would it correct the problem if we made the contract retroactive to July 1st instead of making it no?
No.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, so and how quickly do you think that you would have a response to that? Because I was ready to sign his agreement today.
By the end of the day, I'll have an answer.
Perfect. Okay, sounds good.
Very good.
All righty.
right,
So
so-
we're going to vote on the
Yeah, we're gonna
revised
vote on
motion?
Revised.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any
Aye.
nays? Hearing none, the motion passes. So do I also hear a motion to select the executive search firm that I briefly mentioned? And we also need to create a timeline for the executive search for the permanent director. No, I think this is part of the employment aspect.
Okay.
This is not on the agenda. This is something that I think is important now that, we have agreed to a salary and to the term, and that he's going to be our interim executive director until we find a permanent executive director. I think it's important, since we're here and since we can't otherwise, discuss these matters, that we set a time frame to select a national search firm to find the permanent executive director. So, I was thinking maybe by the November meeting, we could select a national search firm. This is how some colleges work. They interview 2 or 3 national search firms and see what they have to offer, and then select one of them because you have to pay them. So they conduct a national search.
Madam Chairman, who would head that search?
They're national executive search
No, I know, but
firms.
who would be?
No, they would come in front of the board.
No, I know, but who would be the responsible party for that search? Here, on this side.
Well, it probably would be someone in human resources here at the agency.
We
No.
will have to procure for those services?
We have to procure for those services, correct?
Right, but who does that search firm call for candidates? Who do they call for strategy? Who do they call for scheduling?
It will have to be a human resource.
I would suggest that maybe the board
Yes.
assign one of the members to
I
kind of
agree.
lead that project.
I agree. It can't be the executive director since
No,
we're.
it cannot be him, right.
So I think we need to set
create
that
a
up
committee?
first.
So should we create a committee, someone here or a couple of board members that would like to participate and be on that committee to be the liaison of the board with executive search firms?
Yeah, I'm not volunteering for that committee. I have enough on the financial treasury side.
Because of
but
the
I-
sunshine law, I would recommend also that maybe it be one board member.
Agreed.
So that way, there's not a requirement that you have a public meeting every time you want to
I
discuss.
totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Okay, so one board member with someone from human resources?
Correct.
Procurement.
Or for procurement?
Well, both,
Do I
actually.
hear any volunteers?
I will volunteer, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you very much, Board Member Blanco. I really
Thank you.
appreciate that.
We thank you.
Okay, so,
Excuse me, who was assigned as the lead member of the board?
Richard Blanco.
Richard Blanco, yes. So do we have a motion for Board Member Blanco to coordinate with our procurement department to select or to have 3 different executive search firms to come give us a presentation in the next 60 days or so, if possible, for the search of the permanent executive director?
I have a question. How long does that generally take, the procurement process?
I should be
Like,
ready
what's
in
the
a
time frame we're looking at?
I'll start working on it right away, and hopefully by in a month or so, we should have the 3 firms that you'll be selecting or the options.
So what's the process looks like? You
Well,
put out a procurement,
So I'm gonna put together the scope. I'll work with Mr. Blanco, the evaluation criteria that you would like to evaluate them on. We will advertise and hopefully give them a month to submit proposals, and then, so like in a month, most likely.
So the November board meeting seems reasonable?
Yes.
Yeah, October, I think.
Yeah, but we're almost in October.
Right, right, that's what I'm saying, it's not enough time.
Yeah, so, yeah, November.
So motion to,
Let me just ask another question. Was there a national search for the prior executive director? How was the prior executive director hired?
There was not a national firm. It was just a local advertisement.
But doesn't the statute require a national?
Our
search?
Not the
statute,
previous.
our
statute.
statute
Oh.
requires.
Got it, thank you.
Our statute being
The statute that
Created.
created GMX
GMX, okay, got it.
requires a national
Understand.
search for an executive director.
Thank you.
Okay,
you can also advertise it.
yeah, of course.
Locally,
We
of
can
course.
advertise locally, but by statute, we have to search nationally. Yes.
So I motion to approve that long motion you just had.
So the motion, it's appointing Board Member Blanco to spearhead the project with procurement for the selection of the national search firms for the permanent executive director and to bring it up to us for our November meeting. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, there needs to be a second.
Second it?
Yeah, second.
Second.
So all those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Hearing none, the motion passes. Okay, now. So now we can someone let Tori know that for him to come back inside? Welcome back. Now we will move to reports. And I know that our interim executive director provided a very detailed update to us in
I
the
think we
backup.
skipped a section. We're on regular agenda.
I think,
Yes.
did we cover B on the consent?
Yes, we covered, we
covered
covered the consent
consent
agenda. We voted the entire consent agenda minus the employment agreement.
And then we
So,
covered that
yes.
separately. Right, so we're on the regular agenda.
Now we're on the regular agenda.
Yes, policies.
Go back and ask a question on the consent agenda that's been approved already. Is that correct?
You can ask a question. Absolutely.
We'll ask our legal staff.
Is that appropriate?
Can you ask a question? I mean, it's the discussion.
I mean, Robert's Rules of Order would require us to reopen it. However, it's at the board's, at the chair's discretion. If you want to entertain a question, I don't think that there'd be a problem with that board, with that.
I will entertain the
Thank you.
question.
Appreciate it. Simple question. As far as those agreements, because it came up because you're now reviewing the for conflicts and whatever. Were those agreements for the two previous employees? Did it go to outside counsel? Do we know?
I have no idea.
You have no idea it went to outside counsel. Do we know if it went to outside counsel?
I believe not.
It not, or it did not. So, and just to be clear, one was for the executive director, and one was for the general counsel,
Yes.
Correct.
and it did not go to outside counsel.
Not as far as I'm concerned, sir.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
And if I could, Madam Chair,
Yes.
just to supplement the answer, there is no record showing that there was outside counsel representing the board's interests at that time.
I will tell you from the corporate side, I would never have seen such a structure. I don't want to make any further comments on it. I just wanted to make sure that I understood, because since you were actually brought up the issue for our general. Thank you.
And following your question, we don't have a general counsel at the moment. Ours has been on leave, and we just voted to terminate his contract, right? So we have not been authorized to retain a new general counsel yet. It's something that is going to follow the meeting, but that's why I went with Raphael from DOT and with Francine to assist us, so I didn't incur any outside expenses for council. Okay. So I believe now we're going to hear from our executive director on the reports.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, members of the board. So I think we are going to introduce the policies that are before you for board's consideration. So as you know, Madam Chair, members of the board, you asked for us to review all of the assumed policies of the predecessor organization. We've done that. We recommended a series of amended policies. We've eliminated items that we deemed unnecessary and removed some of those procedural burdens. So you'll see those in the recommended policies in front of you. I'll just highlight a few general changes that you will see that's outlined, and for those in the public watching and listening, you will note as well. There are several new policies before you, an HR policy and an ADA compliance policy. We looked at other similar size agencies and entities, and we thought that was prudent to have a policy for GMX. I'll add some color based on a separate conversation with at least one or two board members. We also took an exercise to determine what should be in policy versus what should be in procedure. So we'll have that conversation as well. We've added the geographical boundaries where appropriate of portions of Monroe County. So you'll see that also throughout various policies. I'll just highlight four key policies that I think are relevant. Code of Ethics, as I referenced, we strengthened that policy really in two areas. We added former MDX employees. We've added your board direct reports of general counsel and executive director, as well as direct reports of the general counsel and executive director. So you'll notice that, as well as one other change with the Code of Ethics as it relates to prior employees who may be principals and serving in other capacities as well. So you'll notice that as well. Delegation of authority, that policy is actually very clearer. It delegates authority to your board direct reports of general counsel or executive director, and then through those two individuals, delegating and designating authority further down to other staff. The toll policy remains similar to the prior predecessor agency structure. It does not propose any changes today in terms of board action. However, this does set up some board action for a subsequent meeting. And then lastly, the procurement policy. We received a third-party review of the NIGP, the National Institute of Government Purchasing Officials. They did a review on our procurement policy several months back. So we took that assessment along with internal staff assessment. We've added some definitions. We've cleaned up the procurement policy. The one item I will point out, we removed governing board members from being directly or indirectly involved in the procurement process. We noticed that with our predecessor organization, but of course preserving the board's role to make final decisions and final approval for your consideration. And then the other piece that I'll point out is related to board governance and overall efficiency. We also removed several committees. There was a committee structure with a much larger board with our predecessor agency. We didn't think that was prudent going forward, so we also recommended that change for board consideration. So, Madam Chair, members of the board, those are the policies before you. I'll also just add one other item, talking to several of you. This was, I'm going to call the round one of policies. Clearly, it's a lot of information, a lot of content. Based on your direction, you asked us to present policies to you. So clearly, this would show the governance model of GMX. And of course, we're open to any subsequent recommendations from the board as you direct us to do so. And staff stands ready to answer any questions.
Yes, Board Member Miller, you have a question?
I do. Well, it's not a question, it's more of a statement. So I've obviously been reading, as we all have, through all of the policies and have numerous comments and questions that I think, from my perspective, I realize we need to collectively sort of set our framework and then come back and start working through all all of our issues and all of our comments and concerns. So from my perspective, I know it's a lot. I would offer up perhaps as a motion that we approve these with the understanding that we direct our interim executive director to provide us with a schedule for the next perhaps X number of months that would allow us to more systematically go through a limited number of policies per month, so that we can dive a little deeper into it and give ourselves a little more time to provide comments and feedback. Understanding, though, we need to have this series of policies in place, and then we can take a little more time and be a little more deliberate with making those modifications over a series of months. So I offer that as a motion.
Well, I think it's a very wise motion. From what I hear, it's a working document, right? So do I hear a second for Board Member Miller's motion?
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Do you want to have some, I have one thing to point out.
Yeah.
I was expecting discussion.
Yes,
Oh, sorry. I jumped straight to a motion because I was concerned about discussion. I've got a lot to discuss, and I don't know that would be productive in this environment.
I agree. There probably needs to be one exception. You talked briefly about the procurement policy. Because, for example, you're now going to have to find a search firm for your executive director, and you've appointed Board Member Blanco to that. That would be an exception, for example, to your procurement policy, that board members wouldn't be involved in procurement. So little things like that, we need to think through.
Tweak on the policy.
And if I could just make a comment.
Sure.
Because I totally agree. We're actually changing from a policy-heavy governance to a separation of policy and procedure, to simplify the process, to simplify the operation of the agency. You're absolutely right. That absolutely requires much more in-depth, and I've made this comment to the executive director in our meetings. We have to be very careful that as we move policy into procedure, if we lax or become less stringent, we need to know that. We need to understand that. And our review needs to just not be policy. We may have to stretch a little bit further into procedures. Maybe not but if we're moving items into procedure, we may want to understand to make sure that there's consistency and we're not actually liberalizing a process or policy or procedure.
I think understanding the compendium that makes
Yes.
up
Yeah,
policies, procedures, manuals.
Yeah.
I think that's a holistic
Correct.
grouping of governance for any agency. And I think it's important that we understand how things move from one
exactly,
to the, right, as they become more guidance instead of
exactly.
policy, right? You go from policy to procedure to manuals to guidelines and handbooks, and those become, I agree.
Yeah.
But I think we need to, I think it's too much to try to tackle in one meeting.
Oh, no,
When I
absolutely.
don't know that all of us have had the
100%.
wherewithal to get through all of this.
100%.
Given the time frame.
So the reason I say that is I think we probably need to extend the timeframe.
Understood, and I
This
think
is a dramatic change
It is.
in how we intend to govern
It
this
is.
agency.
And I would just ask Francine, with the chair's permission.
Absolutely.
You noted, so we did change this policy for procurement changes the ability for the board to be engaged. However, my understanding for doing a national search, or we would need to have at least a board member engaged in the practice. So that would be an exception for just that particular instance in this case.
Yes,
Okay,
and it
thank
could
you.
be, and again, you guys will look at the policies and see how it works from a procedure standpoint, being consistent with your objectives, but you might provide for exceptions to come to the board so that you recognize when you're making those changes. That would be one of them.
Excellent, thank you.
So are we going to add language right now to that procurement policy, or should we create this exception now for this national search? What would be the best course of action for this? Because we do need to enact
Sure.
policies, but I understand that we would have immediately a conflict against the policy that we're enacting, appointing someone. Actually, we appointed him before we enacted the policies.
Is it your goal to, I mean, I'm not understanding exactly what we're going to do with the policies, because I'm understanding from Secretary Miller that you might not want to wholesale approve the policies right now.
So actually, my motion was to approve
Okay.
so that we could have a set of policies, but
Okay,
that
right.
come back systematically approach
Making the
a
changes.
series of policies per month.
Okay.
So that we could take a deeper dive. And as my board member to my left admitted, that we need to do probably an even deeper dive once we move some things from policies to procedures. So we need to sort of get that calendar of events situated. But I would agree that we created a potential conflict before we actually
Got to the policy.
potentially approve. So I'll amend my motion with an exception in this one instance for a procurement policy to allow Commissioner Blanco to, or Board Member Blanco, excuse me, Board Member Blanco to chair our search committee procurement process.
Okay.
So the way that I understand is that this is a working document that we all agree it's going to change and it's going to evolve. But for now, this is the best that we can do, and it's better than what it was before. So we will slowly go through all the different policies. I don't know if we want to set now how many policies we're going to review at each board meeting, or I don't know if you have any recommendations.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Thank you, and I've listened intently to the board and your direction. So if you would allow, following this meeting, we will group together many of the policies. Many are, I'm going to call it administration, some are engineering, some are total operations. We'll group those and have group-type conversations by meeting over a series of meetings, I think, to your direction. So and we'll get you that schedule following today.
Perfect, thank you. So I hear the motion. Is there a second to Secretary Miller's motion?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? So Secretary Miller's motion passes. So going back to Mr. Alston, any other reports? or-
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the board. Again, good morning. I am happy to give this morning's interim executive director's report. First, I'd like to recognize the significance of the board meeting here at GMX headquarters and salute this board and your leadership and dedication thus far. I'd also like to commend the governor, lieutenant governor, members of the legislature, and our local delegation for their continued support of GMX with local control and board members who live within our jurisdiction within Miami-Dade and portions of Monroe County. As the board knows, and for the public that may be listening and watching, effective July 1st, based on state law, GMX fully assumed all assets, liabilities, contracts, and employees of our predecessor organization. As you have directed us, this compassionate transition continues as we focus on the pillars that you've asked me to focus on as your interim executive director: effective governance, financial stability, daily operations, people and culture or staffing, and overall communications and public engagement. Board members, you have the full slide deck in front of you, so I'll just highlight a few key points on many of these slides. We'll start with governance. And as you just demonstrated with your action, approving policies showing governance today by this new GMX organization. Based on your also prior board action, we will continue to review all contracts, agreements, and commitments from our predecessor agency. Let me highlight financial stability. We continue to engage the Florida Division of Bond Finance as we prepare our new outlook going forward. As I've shared with you, we have held introductory calls with our various rating agencies, Moody's, Fitch, and S&P, all that have gone very, very well. We submitted a voluntary disclosure, as you are aware, to the rating agencies.
We lost the screen.
That's right. I got to go all the way through. So I'll let the presentation catch up. So we've had great conversations, and thank you, team, for doing that. With the various rating agencies, Moody's, Fitch, and S&P, as I've shared with each of you. Let's jump to daily operations. I think this is critically important as we continue to talk about the compassionate transition. I'm happy to report, board members and to those in the public, that there has been no interruption in our employee compensation and or payments to your consultants and vendors since we have assumed daily operations. So that is critically important. I know that was a question and a concern and direction from the board. So I want to be very clear about that. So thank you for your oversight and support in this area, board members. Let me address people and culture. I was happy to meet with every employee in the GMX organization. We've also had what I call a tea with Tori right here, town hall in this room with every employee, talking about the transition. And I can tell you that many employees have shared great information and been very supportive during this time. So I just want to share that openly and publicly, and salute, of course, all the men and women of GMX who are also with us here this morning. Let me jump to communications and public engagement. As you know, I continue to reach out to all of our partners, our transportation partners, the Miami-Dade Legislative Delegation, County Commission, TPO. We continue to engage with the Florida Department of Transportation, along with our local district, as we re-engage and strengthen that relationship. So we're excited to do so, as well as the Florida Turnpike Enterprise. And we've had a series of conversations, I think most recently as late yesterday, on a big topic that I know will come back to the board very, very soon. And I'll just share also, board members, I'll be welcoming the executive director of the Florida Transportation Commission later this afternoon, who will be coming here to headquarters and is excited to see the vision and where we are with GMX. So colleagues, board members, you have seen the report, and that is my report for today, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that it's already been in the public domain, so happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any questions. I do want to compliment your work in this transition, which has been not easy. It's been a long process for many years. Actually, it's not just most recent. I also had the pleasure of meeting your team, and I was thoroughly impressed. These are real assets to Miami-Dade County taxpayers. These are people that have been around. I kept asking in this 20 years, 22 years, 18, the loyalty to what they do and how they do it is spectacular. So I just want to make sure that I made that comment. I'm actually very pleased, and it's made my transition into this role much easier. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes, and I agree wholeheartedly. I ask a series of questions because when we come to a new position, to a new agency, that we have to even ask where the bathroom is. You know, we have a huge learning curve, and I ask a lot of questions that if you didn't have the answer, your staff immediately, you know, within 24 hours got back to me. So I was also very impressed. We had discussions about road rangers and, you know, where the headquarters or the central command is, to, you know, why the strips on the road have not been marked. I mean, just a series of different random conversations, not only involving contracts or money, but whatever question I had or came to my mind after reading some of these documents, you would say, I will get you an answer. And, you know, everybody that I've spoken with has been very, very helpful. So, again, I share the same sentiment as board member Pages. So moving on.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. So you have two informational items in front of you. One is the formal audit engagement letter, which is a requirement. Coming up at your December meeting, your outside third-party auditors, MSL, will present to the board on the audit period ending June 30. So, of course, that is a majority of our predecessor agencies' fiscal year end date. So you'll see that presentation coming to you. So the formal letter is formal notification from MSL to you as the governing body. The second document is a procurement report, which is a formal report that our procurement team produces regularly for every board meeting. So you'll see a list of all active contracts, the details the date of initiation as well as expiration and going forward. And again, if there are any other information or reports that the board desires, we're happy to provide that as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
These contracts are the previous ones submitted, the ones over 50,000.
I believe it's over
Jackie?
25,000, and I will be providing you with a list of all active contracts.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, Mr. Alston, for the announcements, and I know staff is working with board members to begin scheduling our next round of board meetings. There are a series of key decisions that we anticipate discussing at future meetings, so I encourage all board members to work with Mr. Alston on scheduling. So before we move to other announcements, are there any comments by any of you on topics, policy direction, or observations before, we adjourn? I do have some comments, and I wanted to share those. I am sure that board member Pages did review very carefully our budget and expenditures. But I don't know if our other if all board members saw the amount of money that this agency has spent on communications and ads. I believe last year, because what you're looking in front of you, I think the budget's about $1.3 million. This does not include outside contracts with some of our partners and engineering firms that we also pay for. I think the total is close to $2 million. And I think it's important as an agency, we reflect whether these are necessary expenditures going forward. I know that we inherited the budget from the predecessor agency, but I was very surprised at those numbers and the way that some of these funds were being spent. So I just wanted to share with you a copy of those expenditures so that you would have them for review.
So I think all of us have taken the opportunity, if you don't mind, Chair. I think it is important we understand the context of this. So while looking through a budget report, there's obviously, you're looking at a total amount of resources expended in a certain particular area. But without understanding the context of those expenditures, it's difficult to ascertain, a positive, negative, or neutral aspect towards it. Without knowing what we did in the previous entity, how we move forward obviously is up to us. It is important that we engage with the community.
Absolutely.
It's how we engage with the community.
And the messaging.
And messaging for that. In addition to how we engage on individual engineering projects, there's the overall marketing of our agency and how we interact in Miami-Dade and portion of Monroe County. So this, without the context of it, it just becomes, yes, it's a lot of money. I just don't know what our expectation moving forward and what we're messaging and marketing in the future.
I believe that we've paused a lot of radio ads that were run in the past, and I think it's up to us what the messaging is going to be. Again, this is just, this 1.3 million that you have in front of you is directly from the agency and not through the engineering firms that also have a budget. And they have to notify the public of traffic patterns, traffic changes, the beneficial use of SunPass, how they can get a discount by the usage. I think there's a lot of valid messages. But for a state agency, I think there is a lot of fat that can be cut from that budget. So I just share that with you for you to see what those numbers are. So any other comments?
Thank you. I actually did see these expenses. I didn't actually dig in for obvious reasons. My comments are actually on the revenue side, on the income side. On the first draft of the agenda, there was an item to pay a vendor for work performed that our predecessor agency performed, the vendor completed, and it was done on the behest of the county. The county agreed to the terms of the change in the off-ramp and has yet to pay us. We've been seeking payment from the county for, I don't know what the number is, but it could be 4 or 5, 6 months. And as late as yesterday, we asked that it was on their agenda for payment, and it was still not sure if it was on the agenda or not. I understand that that may not be the only latent payment from the county to the agency. So at this first board meeting, I just want to make sure we establish a couple of understandings. We're not a department of the county. We're not the private piggy bank for the county. We are a completely independent agency, state agency, and we have obligations to our taxpayers and the road users, and a fiduciary responsibility to our bondholders. So I don't know how pervasive this issue is. I just know of 2 such situations. And I don't know if it was just understood because of the previous governance structure and the overlap between the county and the previous predecessor. So I would like to ask, with your indulgence, that we A, reconcile to make sure we understand how many of these we have. B, through the executive director and general counsel, request immediate payment for services rendered, if it's due, and that those agreements be reviewed. I don't know if they're standard agreements, if they're one-off agreements. I just don't know. I don't know. I know that those agreements be reviewed to see if there is appropriate compensation for delayed payments as far as interest payments. I understand that there was a comment made in one of my meetings that, oh, good luck with that. We've tried that in the past. Well, this is in the past. If we provide a service and we expect to get paid, then our contract should indicate when we should get paid, and if non-payment occurs, then what the compensation is for non-payment. At least that's the way I see it in the corporate side. I've always seen it in the corporate side. I don't see why we should operate any differently on the government side. Now, I don't know. I'm sure that I'm stepping over all kinds of interlocal agreements and I don't care. Okay? We need to be responsible. Fiscally responsible, which is a word that is very much to my heart, and you brought up on the previous discussion. So I'd like to see that, if possible, the chair.
Absolutely.
If you see that for our next board meeting.
Madam Chair, absolutely. And I'll just, to tee up the conversation without going into some detail, and I know I've talked to each of you individually on a couple of these items. So there are a series of pending county items. We are continuing to have conversations. We're hopeful. And there are a series of hot topics, which I'll mention as well, that I know the board will need to address coming soon. So I hear you loud and clear, and we'll follow up with the board.
Do you want to give us a public update on the status of our vacant seats and when they should be filled?
Yes, so my hope is, thank you, Madam Chair. So my hope is following today's meeting, based on a series of your comments, and I've been taking notes very intently. I will present a new organizational structure for the organization. As I've shared, there are opportunities for growth. There are opportunities for succession planning. There are opportunities that I think will put this agency as hopefully eventually the premier agency here in South Florida, focused around innovation, focused around transportation technology. So those are the tenets, without giving all the details of the focus of the new organizational structure that I plan to present very, very soon.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Question, Matt.
Sure. Board Member
Director
Perez.
Alston, we had at some point had on our calendars a while back, like a board orientation, and those, I haven't seen that again. So I think it's important that we get that back on track.
Yes, Madam Chair, absolutely. Following this meeting, we've had internal conversation on the board orientation. It'll follow this meeting. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Any other comments? Board Member Miller has a comment. She's just,
No, I thank you, Chair. I think you were directing the build out of the board versus the organization itself, so I'm not
right,
sure.
I believe that the two, thank you.
So,
Yes, the two, we have two more.
That's right.
Board member positions that remain vacant. I think one from the TPO and one from the county.
So my sincere apologies. I thought I heard a different statement, Madam Chair. Thank you, Board Member Miller. So I'll defer to the representative, maybe Board Member Pages, to give the update from the TPO. But as you know, based on your direction, we have sent formal notification both to the county and the TPO requesting those two additional appointments. I know there's action coming forth. I'll let Board Member Pages share the TPO update. The latest from the county, we have not heard any additional movement from their initial three-part motion, but I am hopeful that they will continue to proceed forward with starting that process.
Thank you. As far as the TPO, I had a conversation with the executive director on this item yesterday for pending TPO meeting tomorrow. It's on the agenda at the TPO. I thought it was for a direct appointment. It is for the establishment of a process to then identify candidates and bring and eventually hopefully appoint them by the beginning of December. I find that maybe difficult too because of timing, but December, the earliest we will have an appointment to this board from the TPO will be December 7th.
Because we were waiting, I think, for those appointments prior to scheduling future board meetings, since we would like to have maximum participation and input. Having a full board, I think, is beneficial to the community and to the agency. So I would like you to continue trying to get those appointments made.
Absolutely, we'll do.
Thank you. So if there are no other questions, comments from board members before we adjourn? So hearing none, we will formally adjourn the meeting at 10:15 a.m. Thank you, board members, for your time this morning, and this meeting is adjourned.